Correct watering practices can benefit your turf, save you time and money, where incorrect can waste time, waste money, and also increase other problems that might occur in your turfgrass system. So the first thing I want to talk about just briefly is what's called evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is the amount of water that is evaporated from the soil through the leaf. So it's been taken up from the soil into the plant and out the leaf over an amount of time. This is how much the plant actually used, not how much is applied, not how much was put on, not how much is irrigated, it's how much is used. So if you know how much is used, then you know how much to replenish. So if you don't need to water an inch down, you don't water an inch type of thing. And there's a lot of things that influence evapotranspiration. That's temperature, day length, humidity, and wind speed. For example, higher temperatures, the plant's going to use more water, so you're going to have higher ET. Day length, the longer days, it's going to use more water because it's actively growing for a longer period of time. Relative humidity, higher relative humidity, less plant water loss, so lower ET. So when you have a lot of moisture in the air, the plant doesn't have a lot of moisture coming out of it because of the gradient difference between moisture in the air and the moisture in the leaf. And wind speed, the higher the wind, the higher the plant's going to use. So on windy days in Kansas, your plant's actually going to use more water, even though it feels cooler. It's just because that plant, the water comes out of the stomata and it's sitting on that surface, and as the wind comes by, it blows it and sucks it out. So then it's going to keep pulling water through the plant. So there's different things that influence evapotranspiration. Is the cultivar and species. For example, warm season grasses generally have a lower evapotranspiration rate and are more drought resistant, and they can grow better in the summertime. And the grasses that grow faster typically have higher ET rates. So for example, Bermuda grass grows faster than buffalo grass, so it's going to use more water than buffalo grass. That's why we say buffalo grass, a little bit goes a long way, and just a little bit of water is all it needs. So with that being said, it depends on your grass species, it depends on your irrigation and how much you put on. Irrigation frequency, here in this chart you can see buffalo grass needs the least frequency irrigation, the Bermuda, fescue, zoysia, then bluegrass, ryegrass, and creeping bentgrass, which requires the most to keep it alive. And so with that, you can see that there's the easiest way is the visible appearance of the turf. Most homeowners are not going to go measure ET rates to know how much to put back on. There are getting smart controllers out there that are doing it for you. There's a sensor outside your window, connects to your irrigation box. It can tell you based on the weather conditions, and it'll do a quick calculation. It'll change your clock. And so yes, you need to water. No, you do not need to water. But we're typically not going to go calculate it ourselves and go out, but need to be aware that this is why we're probably overwatering our lawns, is because it's not using as much as we need. And so the soil water content also determines your irrigation frequency. Other factors that influence irrigation: sun, shade, soil type, your slope, thatch, which we'll get into thatch management a little bit, and the grass types in there. But generally what we want to see with irrigating lawns is about a ballpark of 1 inch of water a week. Since we do not have a lot of technology with sensors and this and that, this is kind of our general ballpark area. And what it may be in the spring, it may be an inch of water applied to it, but you maybe wait a little bit before you apply it again. This is like training for a marathon. So in the springtime, it's going to be cooler temperatures, especially for cool season grasses. It can withstand being held off with water for a little bit longer comparatively to the summer. So if we put an inch of water down in the springtime, we're training our grass to go longer without water. So then in the summertime, it knows how to withstand that or go through a marathon. Now in the heat of the summer, we may have to cut it back a little bit just because we got to try and get through it. The easiest way to determine this is just be cognizant. Take a look at your lawn. You'll develop hot spots in a couple days when it needs to be watered. It turns purple to begin with. Easiest way is to go kind of walk on it and see your resilience with it. Does it bounce back fast? Does it stay laying down? That's another way to look at it. And like I said, if you let that turf undergo stress early in the season, it does better in the summertime. It's training for a marathon. You don't just go run a marathon. You gotta run 1 mile, then 2 miles, and 3 miles, and 4 miles to build up to it. You do the same with watering. And you do that with deep and infrequent. Has anybody heard of the deep and infrequent concept? So that concept is you want to water into, deep and infrequent, into the soil. So for example, right here, we have now filled that soil profile up with deep, infrequent watering. So we watered to fill that profile up, and then we waited a while before we watered again. All right? Shallow and frequent, you're about here, you're not getting into the soil. So say it dried off. Now we're going through a drought or a little area. You only have shallow area where there's water still available and shallow roots. Where here you still have plenty of water left in that soil profile, deeper roots for it to survive through the hotter times of the year. So if you replenish the soil profile with water, you can wait. Instead of running it every day and only putting a little bit on it, your turfgrass is going to be healthier. It's going to survive the hotter times of the month. And in return, you may not even need to overseed or do something in the fall. Just stay to your fertility program because you saved that grass through the summertime and it didn't die. Now, deep and infrequent, you're sure that you don't overwater. Overwatering fills the entire soil profile with water, and roots on turfgrass plants need air to breathe too. So if you overwater, then that soil becomes anaerobic, it can't breathe, no gas exchange, and it turns into a swamp. And so that plant eventually dies because it's not able to have gas exchange through the roots. So definitely on the side of underwatering, definitely don't overwater. Now when I ask them, how much do you water? I get a lot of various different answers. I get Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 15 minutes. I don't water. I get every day 9, 3, 5 for 5 minutes. That tells me absolutely nothing of how much is actually getting applied to the turf. So I would use catch cans. We'll get to that in a little bit. If you can update your system with smart controllers, rain gauge things, it'll do it all for you and you don't have to worry about it. If you do not have an irrigation system, you can say hose draggers or bib timers. There's these little things that go right on your hose. You can say set it for 30 minutes, and then you'll go out there with catch cans and you can kind of see how much water's coming down in 30 minutes. So you know I put a ½ an inch on in 30 minutes, so I need to go an hour to get my whole inch type of thing. And we'll come back to a little bit more about the catch cans at the end. Now, when do you water? There's a lot of reasons textbook-wise for health plant of when you water, and there's a lot of other reasons of when you would water maybe the incorrect time. So for the health of the plant, we like to water as early in the morning, right before sunrise as possible. All right, because early in the morning, you're going to have the best water pressure, less wind. Notice I said less, not no. So for Kansas, it's less wind, not no wind. And then less evapotranspiration because it's not as much wind at that time. It's not as hot as that time. You get more or less evapotranspiration. And better water pressure. So in the morning, if you water that plant, you've now supplied water in that soil profile for that plant to make it through however many days it is. As soon as the sun comes up, the leaves dry off, okay? If you watered at night, yes, you have less wind, less evapotranspiration, maybe some better water pressure too, depending on it. But that leaf stays wet all night because the sun's not there to dry it out. That leads to diseases. Diseases need continual leaf wetness. And if you water at night, it's going to stay wet all night long. And then that's when you start to develop brown patch, especially in cool season lawns. So for the health of the plant, you get less disease if you do water in the morning. Now there may be some reasons why you do water at night. If I'm managing a park I'll probably water in the middle of the night for safety reasons. I don't want people hanging out in my park at night. I don't want people in there doing stuff. So most of the time, if you turn the sprinklers on, they're going to get out of there. Okay. If I'm managing areas maybe near a downtown, buildings, high area, people are exercising in the morning, I don't want to have the irrigation on in the morning because they may get wet as people in the community are trying to exercise and type of things. Managing a golf course or large acreage of land, I may have to start at midnight just so it ends the cycle in the morning because I have so much to water type of thing. So this is the best for the turf health, but there are reasons why you may not be able to water at the correct time as well. Now, when you do water, make sure you know going into the soil. If you notice that you start getting runoff after 30 minutes, don't water any more than 30 minutes. You may water that and then let it soak in and then come back a little bit later. It's called soak and rotate. So for example, say you have a heavy clay soil and it can only take a ½ an inch of water before it starts running off the surface. So what we do on the surface is, or at that point, what we end up doing is we know we can water for that amount of time, and then we stop watering and we go water somewhere else on that property. While that's watering, it's soaking in. By the time that gets done, you come back and you water that to finish replenishing how much you need to put in at one time. So you've deep and infrequent watered it now, and you've watered for the same amount of time, but you've rotated through everything so you prevent runoff. That's what's called the soak and rotate. And you'll be able to identify that if you use a catch can method. This is a technical way to do a catch can method where you go out and you put a bunch of cups or stuff. I know the extension office probably has some catch cans that you could utilize or borrow if you need be. And you go set them out, you turn your irrigation on, you set your sprinkler on, you measure how much is in each, and you can determine what your irrigation rate is per time or unit that you're putting out. The easiest way of doing it, you may not need to do it that technical or that difficult. Just set a can out one night that you know, or one morning that you know it's watering, and move it around the yard. You know, you can do this over a week or two or something, and say, well, this part of the yard we ran for 30 minutes but only got a ½ inch. This part of the yard or this zone ran for 30 minutes and we got a ½ inch. So I need to bump one up or I need to turn one zone down so it's getting the same amount of water. You don't have to go into this whole long to do. This is more of what's called an irrigation audit that gives you distribution uniformity along with precipitation type rates. And this is kind of what it looks like. You set catch cans up, you turn the water on, and then you would measure the amount that's in each catch can. So with that kind of includes the overall general watering practices for turfgrass. For more information, check out your Master Gardener Handbook, the Healthy Yards videos, as well as some of the extension publications at the KSU KSRE bookstore. Thank you very much, and we're ready to see you back for Lesson 6.